Welcome to Halftime, a show dedicated to equipping and inspiring people to accomplish what God has prepared them for. I'm Doug Piper, and I'm a Halftime alumni, and these webinars are actually part of my Halftime journey. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, today we have Lloyd Reeb, and Lloyd shares with us each month helpful ideas to aid us in our Halftime journey. Lloyd is a successful real estate developer who made a midlife transition, looking for greater meaning, joy, and impact in his second half. Now, for over 20 years, Lloyd has helped leaders make their second half actually their very best half. And he's the founding partner of Halftime Institute, which is a global team that teaches, coaches, and connects successful men and women in their pursuit of significance. He's taken this message all around the world. Lloyd is also the author of several books, including From Success to Significance, When the Pursuit of Success is Not Enough, and with his wife Linda, co-wrote Halftime for Couples. Now, if that sounds like where you are, or maybe you have been, or maybe you'd like to work on creating greater meaning, joy, and impact in your life, or maybe you know someone that's in that season, you can find out more by going to halftime.org. That's halftime.org. And I'll include that information again at the end of the program. Now, today on Halftime, Lloyd will chat on a particularly important topic, essential tools for your next season. Lloyd, I don't know about you, but sometimes there's a temptation to view successful people as overnight successes. Yet we really all know that that's not typically the case. Malcolm Gladwell wrote, 10,000 hours is the magic number for greatness. And he cited Bill Gates, the Beatles, and many others. But it's more than just practice, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Think about it, Doug. If you've ever watched a master craftsman work, don't they operate out of a really curated toolbox, right? Where the tools are oiled and cared for. And when you watch them use them, they use them with skill. And chefs, I think, have the same kind of approach to their knives that they use in order to be masters of their craft. Doug, this is my Uncle Ed's smallest handsaw. And I remember watching his weathered hands use this tool to create beautiful furniture. And he not only took good care of it, better care than I've been keeping it for the last 30 years, but he knew how to use it. He practiced. He knew where and when to use this tool as opposed to the other saws in his toolbox. And as a result, he became a master. And if you think about it, if he gave that much attention to detail, just simply producing great furniture, then how much more you and I should and could give that same attention to detail to living out this mission that we are gaining clarity around. So when a halftimer launches into their second half or their next season, it is often very helpful to think through the tools that you'll need in your toolbox, the skills you might need to add to your tool belt or just simply to enhance, and to build a simple little plan to do that. So in the next 30 minutes, you and I, Doug, hope to just explore the simple things we've watched that have been a proven step-by-step process to build a great toolbox. When I started into my second half, I didn't even think about the toolbox I would need. And today, it's one of the most powerful things that leverages my time and energy to really bless other people. So when I think of a toolbox, though, Doug, I think of skills, resources, processes, best practices, all of which would help me in doing a better job. And the first step is to really understand what will be needed to live out your mission statement well. And a good way to start on that journey is to look for someone or several who are doing a similar thing to what your personal mission statement defines. And then just talk to them about the tools they've accumulated, what's helpful to them, what they might be missing, and start to onboard some of those tools and explore how they work for you. Now, not every tool works for every person, Here are some quick examples, though, of second half of half-timers who have become master craftsmen in the work by building a toolbox that's world-class. My brother-in-law, Steve Hunter, opened a bike shop in downtown Toronto as a ministry to build on his mechanical skills, but he only employs homeless people. And it's a place to come and learn skills and to learn life skills so you can launch into a healthy life and leave and graduate from his bike shop. And you can imagine when he started into that, he needed a whole lot of different tools, not only mechanical tools, but skills that he had never learned before in order to understand where a homeless person is coming from, how their drug abuse might affect their ability to have digital dexterity. My wife, Linda, when she started Mom's Mentoring, she started to build a toolbox of books and video clips and assessments and magazines and all kinds of things that, and she doesn't really want to call it a toolbox because she's not interested in tools. She calls it a gift box. And whatever you call it, it's a place where if you were to go to our library, where she keeps her books, there are dozens of specific books that she uses over and over again, like managing your emotions so that your emotions don't manage you. And then Steve Seifert is someone who came through halftime, and he was at Edward Jones for 30 years. And today he's running J.H. Ranch, where thousands of kids come through with parents. It's one of the most effective teen parent reconciliation camps in our country. And, so he's leading a bunch of staff that come in the spring and leave in the fall, as opposed to leading, a big practice at the national headquarters of Edward Jones. As I walked through this journey with him, he needed a whole different set of skills and tools in order to do that job well. Sheila Burrows was a Bank of America executive, and her passion is coaching Christian business leaders to use their platform for the Lord. She's become a strength coach. She's become a spiritual director. She's taken business coaching classes, and she's built a whole set of tools that she uses. John Putnam left the financial services and joined National Christian Foundation. And one of the best tools he has, instead of selling product to people, he's helping build alignment between couples and families about generosity. And so he has a questionnaire he uses as a tool that you give to both spouses, and they stick it in separate mail envelopes and they mail it back to him. And you've done this, I think, Doug, in your roundtable. And then he's got this
fantastic
tool. Was it helpful?
It was hugely helpful, particularly in alignment with my wife.
And so when he started, he didn't have that tool, right? He had to put that tool in his tool belt. So for me, my toolbox is priceless to what I do. And here are some of the things. I've listed out some of the things in my toolbox. Talks. I have a long list of talks that I could give on the spur of the moment because that's a big part of living out my calling. Articles. I have hundreds of articles. Scripture verses. So I label the scripture, put it in a Word document in terms of how it might help someone in halftime. I have hundreds of books and articles. Movies are very helpful to refer someone to a movie that might help them with their family. Experts, so outside experts. I have a series of YouTube clips like Francis Collins at the Veritas Club talking about science and faith. Many halftimers, teen or 20-something kids have challenges with faith and science. Clay Christian's video at Harvard about how you will measure your life. I have a list of powerful questions, case studies, reflective exercises, historic documents like William Wilberforce talking about his personal board of directors. You can't argue with his life, and when you read his words, it's very impactful, more so than just me telling people about the power of a personal board of directors. Even poems. Now, some tools I've had to create, and these webinars, in fact, are a tool, right, Doug? When we do these, our hope is that, today there's 106 or so folks that can join by live, but we know that there'll be 2 or 3 times that watch it over the next year or so, and we hope that it becomes an evergreen tool so that any one of our team around the world, when they help a client or they help someone in halftime in Australia to move into clarity around their mission for the next season, they can send them a little 30-minute video that helps them build a toolbox. So many of the tools, like Halftime for Couples that you mentioned, I've had to create, and you might have to create them. So, Doug, I want to talk about your toolbox because you have had to learn new skills and teach me new skills, just for example, to do this. And you've had to put tools on your toolbox, but it didn't just happen at once. So, talk about what that was like for you.
Well, what helped the most was initially Halftime introduced me to several subject matter experts, which was really exciting and inspiring to see what the potential was. But I realized after hearing them describe what they were doing and how they were doing, I wasn't ready to pull that trigger yet. But the enthusiasm was still there. So it took months and months of low cost probes to weed out the good from the great. But as I explored various opportunities, I kind of filtered it by looking for things that seemed to be working and what gave me energy, and identifying initiatives that gave me energy was one of the filters that I learned in my Halftime roundtable. And now I kept my expenses low by buying used items and just attending online classes. So, I didn't have a lot invested. But once I could see momentum and energy building in a particular area, I would start investing in exactly the tool I needed, but one at a time. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, I know you want to talk about the polls, which are helpful for us as we guide our chit chat together. But before, I know that you also have built a parallel, effort that is in alignment with your passion, but it gives you more at bats in the skill sets of doing these live streams, and that's a big piece of it. Like you said about Gladwell, 10,000 hours, or at least a lot of ball touches, a lot of, time doing it. And one of the reasons I keep all of my tools in Dropbox, as many as I can, and on my phone, is because it lets me use them regularly rather than just periodically. So what have you been learning about the skill of using these tools? I mean, if people went and watched our first webinar, well, first of all, it'd be embarrassing, right? But secondly, they would have irrefutable evidence that the practice makes better. Not perfect, but better, right?
Yeah, the parallel effort is so good because it tends to separate the ministry from, I guess, the secular, if you could call it like that, because that hobby requires things that really have not been a priority to me as far as being a ministry. So it has challenged me in many ways to do things I wouldn't have done, but as a result of doing those things, it helps the ministry, like the podcast that we're looking at starting, which I had resisted since day one, but I realized that in the other areas that I'm at, it's very essential. So I think it will be very beneficial to a Halftime when we launch it.
Yeah, so take us into the polls, the two polls. They're kind of connected in some ways, right?
Well, they are. I'll read them over right quick. So we have two poll questions. One is, for your own mission, which is the most challenging for you? I can't get started because I don't know what I don't know, and I find that's nearly paralyzing. I'm struggling with how to find the skills and tools I really need. I want to pursue my mission, but I'm not prioritizing it enough, and I just need more accountability. I have enough skills and tools to get started, but I want to find resources to continually improve, and I find that's challenging. Our other question is the status of my missions, purpose, and or passion. I'm still struggling with this, and I just haven't found the right one. I think I've found my mission, purpose, or passion, but I'm still pursuing low-cost probes just to confirm. I'm starting to go beyond low-cost probes and invest more seriously. And lastly, I'm pretty certain I've found my sweet spot. So, Lloyd, let's look at the results and we'll see kind of where our audience is. And the answer to the question of, for your own mission, which is most challenging for you, almost 50% of our audience has indicated I have enough skills and tools to get started, but I want to find resources to continually improve, and that has proven challenging. Second to that, at about 30%, is I can't get started. I just don't know what I don't know, and I find that's paralyzing. So we've got kind of opposite ends of the spectrum here. We have other votes for the middle ones, but they're much, much smaller. And now that has just shifted to almost 50-50 again, the range being I'm in it and I want to improve, and the other is I can't get started. Our other poll is very strongly at 60%. I'm still struggling with this, and I haven't found the right mission, purpose, or passion. So, an interesting dichotomy here that we have with our audience today.
Yeah, well, so the reason we put in this poll around your personal mission is that it's hard to build a toolbox if you don't have clarity around your personal mission statement. And as you probably know, your personal mission statement likely includes what you're best at, what you care the most about, and the difference you most want to make in this world. And by definition, that helps you know that, okay, if I'm going to serve this cause or these people using these skills, it helps narrow down the kind of tools you might need. So, for example, my mission is to be a thought leader. Mobilizing high-capacity marketplace leaders to make a kingdom impact. So if you're a thought leader, then you need tools that help people gain clarity, because thought leadership is an input. It's not an output. The output is clarity. So the place where I would start, if I was starting from scratch, is what tools do I need in my tool belt that will help people gain clarity as they reinvent themselves in the halftime season of life. Now, you could look all kinds of different places. I remember starting on Google and just searching for books on midlife crisis. And so there's a whole shelf in my library, not this library. I'm at a friend's lake house, but on my normal shelves in my library back home, there's a whole shelf just on midlife transition. It's not particularly Christian-based. It's got a lot of variety in it. And I started to read through those. Well, at the back of each book, there's a list of other resources that you could go to. And then I would go to those websites and look for tools there and resources there. And then there are parallel industries. So helping people get unstuck in their career is parallel to helping people reinvent themselves at halftime. So are there tools in there? So I started opening up other people's toolboxes and rummaging through their wrenches and screwdrivers and hammers to see if there are any that I could try out. So the first place is, you've got to get clear on your mission, and we can help you with that. If you're not clear on your mission, I encourage you to click on a link here to reach out, and we will make sure you get some tools to help you get clear on your mission. Now, if you're in the majority around the second poll, that you have got a lot of clarity, but you can't find the resources. So we're going to go deeper into that, Doug. And then let me just, before we do that, though, let me talk to those of you who are sitting on Go but just haven't gotten started. I think one of the things that holds us back is fear. And what I find helpful is to write down and identify what are the fears that are holding me back from taking the first steps, and ask yourself, could I live with that? And what would be a worst case if I tried this and it failed? Or if I just never try and I just drift along in the life I'm living right now with this passion or purpose just following me like an accusing shadow. And I think the risk is higher to not take a risk and start. Now, my first thing that I did was I started mentoring prisoners. And I made a commitment, which wasn't a smart idea, to mentor prisoners for 6 months. And it was terrible because I was terrible at it. It was really bad. It was a bad day in prison when I showed up. But you know what it did was it got on my calendar. It pushed my real estate development off my calendar for Thursday afternoons, and it got me started. And the first thing I did was I learned, okay, I love helping people, but this is the wrong group of people because I don't relate to their world. So thoughts that you have, Doug, about these two big cornerstones of the poll, the folks who are really wanting to figure out, where do I find more tools, and those that are sitting on Go but feel a little bit stuck.
I know it is challenging to get started. I was there myself. So that's So that is particularly difficult. So one of the things that I found the most helpful was actually just the low cost probes. You don't know what you don't know, and so you've got to try some things. So the live streaming, for example, was started out of frustration, literally, and I thought, why not? I can do this. I can sign up for 1 month. If it doesn't work, I'll drop it, and I'll see how people react to it. So I think getting started and getting over that first hurdle is really important. So I guess the shorter answer is get more serious about your low cost probes. On the second part of our poll, I would say, we have kind of two sides of that. I don't know, they're kind of the same. The low cost probes to me was the most help, but also creating a filter to assess what gives you energy and what does not give you energy. And in my case, that was the filter I used, but maybe the low cost probes and then understanding your own filter.
And thinking back, Doug, when Bob Buford first asked me to come do a talk with him in 1997, I told him, I'm not a talker. Like, I'm a real estate developer. And he said, well, Lloyd, you don't have to be a talker. You just need to share your story. And he went on to teach me that people in halftime are talented leaders. They've heard every, Zig Ziglar in the world. They don't need slick. They need real. So get over your fear that you're not slick, because you're not slick. And that was very helpful. And then I thought, well, who else is great at this kind of stuff? And I bumped into Joe Calavito, who had done 1,500 Stephen Covey presentations with Stephen Covey. And I thought, if anybody can help me, he can. And Joe came and did talks with me. And then he critiqued me like crazy. I still have the notes. He told me, you trail off at the end of a sentence, and you all kinds of crazy things I did. So I onboarded those skills, and then I practiced. And then I remember setting up boxes in our foyer in our house. So there's a mirror there, and I practiced every talk I did in front of the mirror. And was it embarrassing? Absolutely. And I'm doing a talk later today on entrepreneurship that I haven't given before. I feel the same sense of embarrassment today. And this is 20-some years, 23 years later, and thousands of talks later. Guess what? If I want to master this craft, if I want to have those weathered hands that know how to use this tool to be a blessing in people's lives, I got to get over the embarrassment of just feeling like I may not deliver it well, and move on. So here's how I would start. Is create categories for tools and skills that you think are needed to master your craft. And then prioritize them and begin to add to your tools slowly, little by little, one tool at a time, and then get using them. Just start using the tools. The most important thing is using the tools. If you never pick up the saw, you're never going to get great at it. If you never do a talk, if you never give your elevator speech, if you don't use the assessment tool that you think would be helpful for someone, you won't get great at it. And so I would encourage you just categorize them and begin to build tools and use them. Here's the categories that I would encourage you to think about. This is one way to categorize your tools. This is how I categorize them. Communication tools and skills. So this could include promo and marketing tools, your elevator speech. Everybody that comes through the halftime 100X forum, even though they're talented corporate leaders, they practice their elevator speech and get critiqued by everybody else in their group. And it's always a little embarrassing. Like, why do we have such a problem with that? But it's helpful. Small group facilitation skills, very different than large group. Large group speaking skills. Video speaking skills. This is way different. There's nobody in this room. I'm looking at a camera. How to have a team conversation is a skill that you have to have in the nonprofit world. It's different because there's three kinds of conversations you have to have in ministry. You have to have the corporate conversation that we're used to, the cause conversation, and the community conversation. And then preparing to a set of talks that communicate your ministry or your so that's a communication skills. The second one is direct service tools and skills like mentoring, teaching, coaching, assessment tools, books, articles, videos, podcasts, case studies, stories. Stories are very powerful. Keep building stories that are accretive to the work that you do if it's direct service. And then thirdly, strategic tools and skills. So board governance, you may need to know more about board governance. Leading from the second chair, very often you've been a CEO and you may be in the second seat. You may be a silent partner or an operating partner or a board member. And there's a great book on leading from the second chair. I use Drucker's book on the five Drucker big questions. I use it almost every week. And it's a very powerful strategic tool to help half-timers refine their ministry strategy. All right, so categorize the tools you might need. Communication tools and skills, direct service tools and skills if you're serving people directly, and strategic tools and skills if you're playing more of a board role or a chairman role or a CEO role or a high-end leadership role. And then the second thing is just use them regularly. Flag the ones that are most effective and abandon the others. There's nothing worse than a cluttered toolbox. You can't find anything. You're rummaging around looking for the one thing you really need. I keep abandoning tools every year. They're good, but they don't get used, or they're not very effective, or people look like a blank stare on their face when you use it. Just abandon that tool. So I'll be happy to share tools, examples of tools in my toolbox with you. We'll send a few along with the email that you get after this. But to sum it up, I think, Doug, for you and I, get clear on your mission. Start to understand what skills and tools are needed to be a master craftsman, just like my Uncle Ed. Put some of the tools in there and use them and get good at them, and abandon the tools that don't work.
Let's move into the questions, and we will start with the first one, which is from Carolyn. Carolyn asks, are there working or support groups to continue the halftime journey? Would you consider this?
Well, so many folks come through halftime, and in the first year, they gain some clarity and they start testing things out. But as they move along, they discover either new areas of their life that they want to refine, or they come to a season when they need to move from king to sage. If you've been doing a ministry in a leadership role, you may, after 4 or 5 years, you may move to more of a sage role. And so very often what happens is we coach them through Halftime 2.0. And I've done many, many Halftime 2.0 coaching engagements with people who were halftime alumni. But what's missing in a one-on-one coaching engagement as you refresh your plan or your roadmap is the peer interaction that we've all valued so much when we went through halftime for the very first time. And so that's the part that we want to remedy is to enhance our alumni engagement by providing peer group opportunities to come back to square one, look under each rock, see what's confirmed and what needs to be improved and what needs to be abandoned, and refresh it.
All right. Well, that looks like our last question, Lloyd. So thank you so much for joining us and your time today. We do this monthly, and we also have months when we talk to alumni. So hopefully those will go smoother, and Lloyd may be back in his old office by that time. And we just look forward to seeing you again. So thank you so much for joining us today. Bye-bye.